Welcome back to Bear Cubs on the Mic, the podcast where we talk about all the things happening at our school. I'm Iris.
And I'm Ruby. Today we're talking about something a lot of students have been noticing. Our school is getting really crowded.
That's right. More students, bigger class sizes, longer lines. It's making everyday things a little harder. And today we have a very special guest to help answer some of our questions about it. Please welcome Superintendent Dr. Calveric.
Good afternoon, Ruby and Iris. Thank you so much for the invitation to be on your podcast, Bear Cubs on the Mic. I'm super excited to share any insight that I can provide today on facilities and overcrowding.
We are so glad to have you here today. This issue is a big one, and we asked students about the biggest challenges they're facing with overcrowding. Here are some of the top ones. Class sizes are too big, it's hard to move around, and activities like scoots don't work well. Lines for everything are super long, whether it's in the bathroom, the hallway, or getting lunch. It takes forever. The cafeteria is really crowded and loud. It's tough to find a seat. And if you accidentally drop your lunch, there are no extras. Assemblies are packed. It's hard to see and it gets really loud. And it takes a long time to enter and exit. Even clubs are overcrowded. There aren't enough supplies or space for everyone to enjoy them. Teachers need to make extra copies for new students, but we're running out of ink and paper.
So, Dr. Calveric, what's going on? Why is our school so overcrowded?
What a great question, and I love that you've done your research. So shout out to you for talking to students before prepping for our podcast today, because truly the boots on the ground, the students in the school, and the teachers that work here each and every day are the ones that are experiencing this crunch that is occurring because the community around us is growing. Caroline County is the fourth fastest growing county in Virginia based on last 3 years worth of population data. And that means that we need to keep up pace with the interest in becoming members of our school community and our community at large. So you talked specifically about classes being big, lines for everything, cafeterias being crowded and loud, assemblies being packed, clubs are overcrowded, and that's because you have such high interest, high engagement here, and you run such tremendous clubs. And then teachers are needing more supplies. My response to that is yes, 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 and yes. 100%. I am completely aware and believe that these issues are present each and every day. And I love that you are bringing voice to them.
That makes sense, but what happens if we just keep getting more and more students?
Well, we do expect more and more students. And so right now we have just completed, these are some big words here, but what we call a facility study and a demographic study. Let me tell you a little bit about what both of those cover in kid-friendly language. We have 5 comprehensive schools. What I mean is we have 3 elementary schools, Bowling Green, Madison, and of course, Grizzly Territory, Lewis and Clark. We also have 1 middle school and 1 high school. And then we also have what we call auxiliary buildings or extra buildings, are buildings that house our alternative education program, the school board office, transportation, maintenance, all of those operational buildings that help keep the school division running efficiently behind the scenes. A facility study takes a look at how are these buildings being maintained. Do they have some major improvements that need to be made? Just like when you own a house, girls, you have to repair the roof. You have to get new windows. Well, the same is true of school buildings. We have to keep our buildings up to date. In addition, we have to keep all of those extra buildings up to date. And we're doing really well with our school buildings, but we're doing less well with those auxiliary buildings. So we need to be attentive to both and make sure that we are funding what we call our capital improvement plan on a regular basis. And we have to work with the Board of Supervisors to do that. The other study I mentioned was a demographic study, and that I'm going to break that word down for you. Basically, it's looking at how many people live in our county, where they live, and where the predicted growth is. And I'm sure, Iris and Ruby, it would not be a surprise to you to hear that the western part of the county where you live to come to Lewis and Clark is growing tremendously. You think about Ladysmith Village or Pendleton. Both of those still have rooftops that are being built and new families to join our schools. And we have to be ready for that. And so these studies were done over the last year, and the architects and the engineers that did them for us came up with options to present to the school board and to the community as to how we can handle this growth. We can do renovations to the buildings if appropriate, or we can go to the community and the Board of Supervisors and also talk with them about their desire and willingness to support new schools being built. So that's where we are. Tonight, as a matter of fact, I'm going to Salem Church in Sparta to talk to their community about some of this.
And I love how y'all are having so many different meetings and talking to the county about it and not just making all the decisions by yourself.
I appreciate that. We definitely believe that communities are a reflection of the schools that they keep. And so in order to make sure that we are providing the schools that our community wants, we have to have student, parent, taxpayer, and our staff members' voices at the table. So we've done about 15 community meetings, and that's just round one. More rounds will come because we will have to modify our options that we've presented based on all of the feedback that we've received.
So, what is being done to help with all of these problems?
Great question. Right now, we had 8 options that the architects provided to us, and we narrowed those down to 4. So there are 4 out for the public to review right now and give us feedback on. All of them, with the exception of one, reflect a brand new elementary school. And that means that we would be building a new elementary school that would accommodate whether it's 450 students or more. And 2 of the 4 plans require redistricting. Redistricting means that we would have to evaluate what schools each of the neighborhoods attends. And some of our neighbors may need to move to a new school if that neighborhood was identified as being impacted. So there's a lot that goes into that because people love their schools. You love Lewis and Clark, right?
Yes.
Yes. And so we want to make sure that we're doing this expeditiously, but in a smart manner. And so ultimately, we're looking at those plans. We're looking at the feedback we're being given. Actually have a school board meeting at 8 a.m. on Wednesday morning. We're attending the Board of Supervisors meeting on Tuesday night because they're doing a work session by themselves to talk about school facilities, and we want to listen. And then Wednesday morning, we're doing a closed school board meeting. We'll open up to the public, but then we'll move right into a closed meeting where just the school board is able to talk about property and facilities Wednesday morning. So we're narrowing down decisions. We're creating new options, and all of that will come out in another round of community meetings.
That sounds like a lot of work. Is there anything that students can do to help make these things better?
Well, you're doing it. You are putting a voice to the issues. You've talked to your peers about what they're experiencing with overcrowding. I encourage you to keep your parents informed and invite them to come to school board meetings and to Board of Supervisor meetings. There's actually a meeting tomorrow night, and public comment is at 7:30. And I talk often with the Board of Supervisors, and they really want to hear from someone other than the superintendent because that's my job. They want to know that the community they serve is also saying the same message that Sarah Calverick is saying. They want to know that the taxpayers want to spend their money on new schools. So there is no one better to share the message that you've just shared with me about the things that are impacting Lewis and Clark than you. Both of you and your friends and your parents come out and speak and lift your voice so that the community knows that we need a new renovation or a new building.
So that's a really good idea. But what about the things students are dealing with right now?
In relation to other things that are occurring, such as the space, We actually, this year, you may have noticed you have 2 librarians now. You have 2 art teachers. You have 2 music teachers, and you've always had 2 health and PE teachers because the Virginia requires more PE than the other Encore classes. But you can see we recognize that over 1,000 students is not a right size elementary school. It's very large, and we would prefer it to be smaller. But we're trying to outfit you with the staff you need in order to accommodate that number of students. But ideally, expanding this building is something the community needs to talk about because research shows that the size that we're currently at may not be most effective for elementary school.
That makes sense. I guess teamwork is really important when space and materials are really limited.
Absolutely.
What about assemblies? They're really crowded and it's hard to see and it takes forever to get in and out.
Well, I wish that I had pixie dust or a magic wand to help you with this one, but I do think that your leaders in this building are really good at creating alternative options. And what I mean when I say that is in smaller buildings, like possibly Madison Elementary, they may be able to do one assembly and get all of their students in the cafeteria. Or maybe they'll do a K2 and a 3-5 and be able to do it in 2 assemblies. But in order to accommodate over 1,000 students, I am certain that Mrs. Brown is doing an assembly multiple times. She's probably doing a K1, a 2-3, and a 4-5 because I think you each have maybe 7 teachers per grade level, if I'm not mistaken. Plus, you have a large number of preschool students here as well. So if we're including preschoolers, then we have to factor those numbers in as well. So I don't know that there is a quick fix to assemblies other than doing them virtually, which just doesn't have the same feel, does it, to watch it virtually?
I think students would really like smaller groups for assemblies.
I agree with that. I think some of the obstacles associated with that is if you're bringing a guest in as a speaker, are they willing to speak to an individual grade level? That means that they would be repeating that assembly as appropriate for ages, right? 6 times if you count K through 5. And sometimes we have to pay by the hour and then it becomes cost prohibitive. Or we're running into lunch times or we're running into PE times. And so those spaces that we use then are available. So just a lot of variables to think about when you're talking about assemblies. But I agree because I've come to a lot of your assemblies and they are large, they are loud, and then if you add parents in, we really are struggling with the parking lot as well.
How do you think overcrowding is affecting teachers? Is there anything students can do to help?
Well, first of all, I love that you're recognizing that. I think that's the first step, right? Is just acknowledging that, when you're working in a building of 1,000 kids, there's greater likelihood of things going awry or not being able to access things. But fortunately, Miss Gilliam and Mr. Merritt and Mrs. Brown, they run a tight ship alongside all of the resource specialists, including Miss Yonkin, who's helping out with this great podcast. Everybody pulls their weight and does an amazing job to pitch in and really lift the work. And so I think students, when you come in with a positive mindset and you show that you're giving your all, that makes the hard work that teachers do worth it each and every day.
If students or parents are really concerned, what can they do?
I love when parents and students are aware and then they educate themselves by coming to a community meeting. Again, we are concluding our first round of about 12 to 15 community meetings. We had 2 here actually at Lewis and Clark and had a handful of parents attend both. But then the third step of that stool, right, is advocacy. And students and parents can write letters to the school board. You can write letters to the board of supervisors. I think it's important to reach out to your locally elected officials, especially the Board of Supervisors, because they actually hold what I say are the purse strings, meaning our board does not have the ability to raise money and tax people to help pay for new facilities. We have to work in tandem with the Board of Supervisors. So if the Board of Supervisors hear from the community, they're more apt to understand that this is something that would be supported. So writing letters, emailing, making calls to these individuals, and then attending the board meetings. There's a board meeting, and I'll say a date, but by the time this gets published, it probably will be past tomorrow night, which is Tuesday, March 25th. And the meeting starts at 5 o'clock for the work session, and you can observe that. And then the regular meeting starts at 6, but public comment is at 7:30. So people can roll in at 7:25, make their public comment about this topic. You get 3 minutes. So you want to make sure that you've kind of thought through your points and maybe even jotted them down. It's totally okay to come to the podium and read something scripted that you've written, or to just tell a heart story, right? Some of the heart stories are the most impactful, meaning that you're just telling your experience. It's not full of data. They hear that from me. The next opportunity to do that will be a Board of Supervisors meeting. It's the Tuesday night after spring break, which I think is Tuesday, April 8th off the top of my head. And that, again, would start at 7:30 for public comment. And then the next regularly scheduled school board meeting is April 14th. So please don't be shy. This is an important opportunity for our community to invest in our students and our education system.
And we'll try to spread the word as much as we can. And also, Bear Cubs, make sure we all are Caroline County, so it's not like you're going up to another county to say these things.
Absolutely. And they love hearing from students. So please, if you feel so inclined and you're courageous, by all means, we want to see you at the school board and the Board of Supervisors meeting.
Wow, we've learned a lot today about why our school is so crowded and what's being done to help.
Yeah, and it's great to know that there are plans in place to make things better. Even though it might take some time, at least we know that our concerns are being heard.
A big thank you to Dr. Kalveric for joining us and answering all of our questions.
Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to be with both of you.
Yes, thank you so much. That's it for today's episode of Bear Cubs on the Mic. Thanks for listening,